Hey, listeners, it's Jen, welcoming you to part one of a special two-part episode with Texas based singer songwriter Mark Winters. Our conversation was so rich, it couldn't be contained in one episode. So this week, please join me for part one, and we'll be back with part two of the episode next Monday. Thanks for listening. Hey, Mark.
Hey, Jen, good morning.
What are you listening to this week? Welcome to Season 8 of What Are You Listening To? The weekly podcast created to foster community through music by sharing the stories behind the songs that soundtrack our lives. Some of the songs are old, some new, all good. I'm Jenn Tully, and this week I'm joined by Texas-based singer-songwriter Mark Winters. Mark is many things: a witty poet, a passionate musician, entrepreneur, optimist, family man, and a bona fide rocket scientist. He first picked up a guitar to play a song for his wife on their anniversary. That's when he discovered the joy of connecting with people through music. Mark combines music, poetry, a science background, and love for his community to form his signature sound, rock with a positive vibe. This week's episode will feature 4 of Mark's latest releases so we can dig into his process of writing music, which he says starts from a place of poetry and creative inspiration, combined with his rocket scientist brain that looks for structures that help him explore the initial burst of inspiration that ultimately leads him to creating a song. If that sounds like a lot, don't worry, we're going to get into it with the man himself. And in case his music is new to you, we'll publish a playlist with the episode so you don't miss a beat. With that, let's get started. Mark, I am so excited to jump in and talk about your songs.
Yay, Jen, let's break it down. Are you having a good morning?
Let's do it. I'm having a good morning so far. I really am. You know, we had a freeze here in Texas. I believe you're sitting in Sugar Land. Is that right? Are you in the Houston area?
Yeah, Houston
Yeah,
area.
you're in the Houston area. I'm in the Austin area. So we had we had terrible weather last week. It was freezing cold. And then this week it was 80 degrees. So, welcome to Texas. But I'm having a good morning because we've got some sunshine out. Looks like it's going to be warm again. So I'm ready to jump in and talk about my very favorite thing, music and singer-songwriters.
Oh, yeah.
So we're going to start with a track. I feel like, I mention it often when I have the opportunity to speak with singer-songwriters. I love having them on the show because I'm so fascinated by the entire process, right? As a non-musician, but a super music fan, writing music seems like magic to me. It seems like impossible that all of these things can come together to create something as important as music is. And so I'm really excited to learn more about your process, partially because you have such an interesting backstory, but also because I think you're such a great storyteller. And I feel like this first song is a great jumping off point for that. So let's get into it. Our first pick is one of your songs called Fake Gravity. So tell me about how this song came about. How did you get the idea for Fake Gravity? When did this come to you?
Don't you know gravity is fake? That's what science told me. No. We mentioned a little bit about the creative process for me.
Sure.
Typically it's starting with a feeling that my brain typically, writes some poetry about. That's kind of usually how I start. And this one kind of started in that same way. I was thinking, I love my wife, but I'm a super nerd. I should write a super nerdy love song and put as many science words in it as I possibly can, right? It started off almost like a joke thought like that. And I told her, I'm going to write this song. And she's like, people don't want to hear that. And I'm like, no, I got to write it. I'm compelled to write it. And so I started really thinking about how gravity has this, pull on us. We got, the physics of gravity going on, and how, you can feel it sometimes, and sometimes, you can't.
Right.
And I got the feeling, when I was falling in love with my wife, you have almost a sense of vertigo, like you're standing on the edge of a cliff, and you feel gravity starting to pull you down, right? But then, the person's picking you up. And so in my mind, the concept of gravity and love and sometimes, love is stronger than gravity or any other force in your life, and it really pulls you in a direction that's just totally unexpected. And so, the concept started becoming, a poem that ended up in translating out more, into this melody that I was hearing. There's this set of oohs in the
Yeah.
song that go, ooh, whoa, whoa. So that kind of came in my head a little bit. And then I'm
Okay.
like, all right. Then the song kind of started taking shape from there. I like strong rhythms, and I like piano and I like guitar. And so, things started sort of meshing in from there. And I decided I wanted it to be, upbeat and not humorous, but upbeat and sort of, and connective. And so that's kind of how the song sort of started coming, together.
Did you
Um,
have the
yeah.
did you, I mean this is I always love this question. Did you have the music and the melody before the lyrics, or did you have the lyrics first and then put it to music?
Yeah,
Or is it all kind of happening simultaneously?
my process is different as I've developed myself as an artist. So I
Okay.
really, I started writing in 2019, my original music. I picked up the guitar to play a song for my wife in 2011. So
Okay.
between 2011 and 2018, 2019, I just was learning music. I didn't know anything. I'd never sung, never played. And so I taught myself a ton. And when I started writing in 2019, the strongest foundation for me as a creative was poetry. My grandmother
Okay.
taught me to be a poet when I was like a small kid, like 5.
Okay.
And so poetry and painting have been sort of artistic expressions of mine. And so as I started writing my own music, I would, like when I write poetry, I have a feeling and I start trying to let it out, right? What's the inspiration to let the poetry sort of form? And so lyrically, that's where I would start when I was
Right.
writing my music. And then as I've progressed and gotten better at playing guitar and piano and singing, things have started shifting to more of the jumble, like you mentioned, right? So now it's like this song came together a bit as a jumble. I had one small haiku that I had written about it, and I was starting to hear a beat, like a heartbeat, boom, 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 boom,
Yeah,
right? So that's in the song, right? So you've
it
got this
is.
heartbeat going, right? But then there's got to be a groove, doom da doom da doom da doom da. So I've got to have that going in there because it's a joyous journey, right? It's scary, but it's a joyous journey. And
It is.
so it all started kind of coming together like that, and yeah, then I wanted it to be a bit contradictory, right? So I wanted to
Mhm.
stretch in there, like you hold me, you lift me up, you hold me down. It don't make sense, right?
Yeah.
So just that whole concept started taking shape, and it was phenomenal. Yeah.
Well, it keeps the song so interesting, like having that push and pull and the black and white and the dark and the
Yeah.
light and the heavy and the soft. Like I felt like that's why I kept coming back to this song. And there is so much fun play in it. Again, knowing about your background in, aeronautical engineering, like everything's in there. There's neurons, there's pulses, there's gravity, there's acceleration. You talk about all of these things in the song. And it just like every time I listened, I felt like I found a new Easter egg, it just felt like something I could continue to dig into over and over again. And I know you also considered this was something I'm always very curious about influences, whether it's other artists that people are influenced by, or like you said, your grandmother who taught you poetry, or your wife who seems to be a big inspiration for you. I have some big questions around that as we get further down the playlist. But you also said you consider John Mayer, Tom Petty, and Jason Mraz as significant influences, and I felt like this song I got a lot of like Room for Squares era John Mayer. Like that's
Yes.
where.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think, I learned to play guitar playing John Mayer songs and
Okay.
those earlier songs. I love his groove. I love how he approaches a solo. I love his influences himself, with the blues guitarists and such that he was inspired by. And I love his early work. As a matter of fact, a song I cover often from him is, you know, is making the world. I'm just, I
Waiting for the
just
world to
wait,
change.
waiting
Waiting on
for the
the world
world
to
to
change.
change. Yes, I was
Yeah.
like, I had the words in my head because I
Yeah.
love the message of it, right, and the
Yeah.
groove of it. So yeah, I think definitely inspiration from early John Mayer on this one. And then I love collaborating with people. I learned
Okay.
to do it. I went to a songwriting retreat, my first formal education in Austin, your neck of the woods, and Andrea Stolpe was the teacher for it, and she does regional seminars. She's amazing, and she unlocked in me the ability to co-write and collaborate with people. And when I came back from that, I started co-writing with everybody. I just love that shared energy and that sense of community. And so this one I wrote with Nash Overstreet. A friend of mine, Jake, introduced me to him, and
Wow.
he's got a little more of a pop background than me, and so some of the poppy elements in here, right, are coming from Nash. And so yeah, it was just a great journey overall. Just putting Fake Gravity together, and I love playing it.
Love
It's
it.
so fun.
Yeah, it's one that I kept going back to as like I said, as I dug into your catalog. That's one that I really felt compelled to go back to. And the songs that I chose were certainly partially because of their recency, but I also think that it showcases how broad your spectrum of music is. Right, none of these four songs sound the same to me that are on this playlist. And I'm going to go ahead and offer a spoiler alert this week, listeners. I actually did add a fifth song. We may or may not talk about it on the show, but you have to hear it. So I did throw a fifth song on this week's playlist, but they all sound so different. And so I think that's a great segue into our second song that we're going to talk about from your catalog, which is a song called Velocity. Here we are again, sitting in these science terms, which I love.
What? Yeah, science nerditude in action. Yeah, yeah. It's like I try to give people a window into the mind of a scientist, right? So my background, my undergraduate degree is in aerospace engineering. Computational fluid dynamics is my field of study, and so that's like atmospheric flight or flight through or objects moving through fluid like water or something like that, and the math of it has a lot of calculus and differential equations in it, and it's undefined. It's an area that even AI still can't solve today. And so I love the fact that it's a mystery and you're still looking for the answer.
Yeah.
And I love applied physics. And so, this song starts gelling for me. I'm driving on my tour in the spring. Last year was my first two big tours, right? So it was really amazingly fun.
Congratulations.
Yes, an amazingly fun year. So I'm out in the spring on my first long trip, and I'm driving between Portales, New Mexico, and Santa Fe.
Okay.
And I get out in the middle of this canyon, and the wind. Well, I didn't know this. I'm driving along, and my car, I've got cruise control on. I've got a small SUV and a trailer that I pull for my tour. And so I'm doing my thing and sort of daydreaming, driving. And next thing you know, my car starts slowing down. I'm like, what's going on with that? And so as it starts slowing down, it takes me out of my reverie. And I'm like, all right, what's happening, right? And so I take my cruise control off and I hit the gas, right? And I'm still like slowing down. I'm like, what's happening with the slowing down thing? And then I realized the car's kind of shimmying a little bit. And I'm like, hey, I can hear the wind howling. I'm in a windstorm. And I don't realize it because I mean,
Oh,
when in Houston, maybe if I'm in a hurricane, I don't drive in a hurricane. When do you
right.
ever get a windstorm in Houston? It just doesn't happen, right? And so I'm on this 4-lane highway, and you should not floor your car during a windstorm. That's my takeaway there. I floored it, and it didn't go anywhere. Like right, 50 miles an hour. I couldn't go any faster than I'm like, okay, I really need to get to Santa Fe. I'm running behind and the wind is killing me, right? And so it made me, and I'm like, okay, find your Zen space, Mark. breathe. It's all good. It's nature. It's bigger than you. You need to just sort of relax and get in your surfer mindset and ride the wave. So I'm like, all
Yep.
right, I'm doing my thing now. And I'm like, it's amazing how sometimes, you know, I started thinking about relationships in our lives and, things that are happening in our life that we want and desire, and how sometimes the world is fighting against us, right? And you have to learn to ride the highs and face the lows and be okay that it's not always easy to keep your
Yeah.
velocity moving forward, right? You have to, you have to be okay with that, and you have to be mindful of that and all the things that can affect you. And so, you know, the chorus, keeping my velocity is harder than it seems, right?
Yep.
The wind is always, pulling me to the edge of my sanity. I'm out in this windstorm. I can overcome the current though, right? Your love is the only thing that I need, right, to keep my
Right.
velocity, right? And so the vibe of the song really took shape on the road. And of course, with all the modern tools we've got now, I could just punch my voice to text button on my note and just narrate away and write my
Yeah.
song while I'm driving, right?
Well, I
So
love that
yeah,
because you answered my question without even knowing it, because that's the lyric that I wrote down. I often talk on the show about sometimes I'll hear a song, and I'm a big lyrics person. I always say, like, I will never throw away any of my albums. They're like, it's my library, they're my poetry. Like, we have an extensive book collection as well, but for me, music, it's my library. It's where I go back to remember things that are important. And I sometimes hear a lyric different. Like, I don't know any other way to describe it other than it sits differently in my ears, right? Like, I hear it differently and it stays with me. Out of every word in a song, there's a phrase or a bar or something that I'll take. And that was the one I took from this, was keeping my velocity is harder than it seems. And so, yeah, I had to know. I'm like, did something happen that made you like physically feel that? And so you literally just answered the whole question around that. And when I said that I could hear that early John Mayer and Fake Gravity, another influence that you called out was Tom Petty. And a note that I made was that I hear a lot of Wildflowers era Tom Petty in this one. And I don't know if it's the piano or what, but I really do. I love this one. I think the piano in this song sets the tone so perfectly from the beginning. And is it a fair assumption, I heard you say, that when you picked up a guitar, you also were learning piano? Do you also play piano on this, or is somebody else
yeah,
playing piano?
yeah. So I've been learning to play the
Wow.
piano. So I started playing guitar. So that was my first instrument. Then I started singing after I played guitar. And then for a long time, it was just guitar and singing and guitar and singing. And then I started, when I was doing more compositional work, I started using one of those little small Akai keyboards to sort of work out a melody. And then I'm like, okay, well, I studied John Mayer and his solo shows. And I studied Ed Sheeran and his solo shows because I
Okay.
perform a lot as a solo artist. And they all had a secondary instrument to, I think, to give a variety to the audience listening. And so I
Hmm.
started learning to play the piano more formally. And so for this one, though, when I put this song out, I had composed the part on the piano, but I couldn't get that roll. I just didn't have I couldn't get in the pocket, right? And so I had a friend of mine, a longtime producer of mine, John Edward Ross, has an amazing roster of people in Houston. I love to hire local people to do things. And so I have a friend playing the piano for
Okay.
this track because it was just there was too many things going on in it that were beyond my it's not just a simple
Yeah.
chord, that I can sing along to. So I do the little roll on when I play it solo if I'm playing it on my guitar. I have a way to play the hook and the roll on my guitar. But if I'm singing along to this one on the piano, it's like chord. It's a little more basic.
Yeah,
But I
but
agree
you're
with
going to
you.
get there. You're going to get there.
Yes,
That role is going to
yes.
be second nature to you this time next year.
I gotta be able to do it.
Next time we speak, you're going to be doing it all on your own.
Yes, yeah. And I love going back and forth. Like um, I'll play a song on the piano. I'll start it on the piano, and then I'll loop the chords on the piano, and then I'll grab my electric guitar, and then I can, you know, imitate John Mayer's to the best of my ability and jam out a little bit, right? And then I can either go back to the piano or finish the song on the guitar, and so it makes a nice transition too, because the piano's it's like a great bed. If you're going to do like solo
Yeah.
guitar work or whatever, it's a great bed to lay down to be able to play on top of.
Well, and I just love it. Like you said, I love those two instruments together too. I love the sort of, I don't know if hard and soft is the right word, but I always love a heavy piano acoustic guitar number. I just think they work. Some of my favorite songs are composed that way. And so I think I just always kind of go back to that. So I think that's why I was so drawn to Velocity. This is an interesting question, and I don't even know if it'll make sense or if I can say it in a way that makes sense. But I often ask guests that I have on the show where English is a second language. I say, whenever you're writing or you're in an artistic flow state, do things come to you in your native language or do they come to you in English, since that's the language that you kind of live in every day? And I was curious for you, like whenever you're thinking about something, does it come to you first in scientific terms and then you have to sort of translate it into layman's terms, or you have to translate it into something that's a little bit more relatable or understandable?
Yeah, my whole life, I have this sort of juxtaposition of thought that's happening, right? Always. Like, when I see, like I wrote this song called Perfect Light, and
Okay.
I'm in my car, I'm driving, and the light refracts through the window and splits into its spectrum, right? So it's kind of like a rainbow. And I love the color red. And so I'm looking for red in there, and I'm like, okay, that's really cool. And then I see a face in the spectrum, and I'm like, yeah, that person has this amazing quality. And so and then I start thinking, well, when I see a person like Jenn, I'm looking for Jenn's perfect light. That's how I see the world. And so it's who says refraction, right? I mean, my wife's like, why are you so nerdy, right? I see the thing, it's like refraction, okay. But then I can explain it in poetic terms because the poetry comes to me. And so it's like, okay, here's another example. My grandmother taught me to paint. And so, and she paints watercolors. And so I paint with her left-handed watercolors and impressionistic things. And my grandfather taught me to do pen and ink drawing. Okay. And so I do pen and ink drawings right-handed. And so I'm ambidextrous. And so when I see something, and if I'm going to translate it down into a work of art, like 2D art, I have to decide, am I going to use my right hand to do it with precision and line art style, or do I do it with my left hand and it's going to be impressionistic? And so I think just those halves of my brain are always at war trying to get my attention to say, no, say it this way, no, say it that way.
I actually love that. So we have this conversation a lot in my house as well. I think it's taken me into, well into my 40s and maybe even later to understand that there are so many different kinds of brains out there, right? And how amazing and unique each of them are. I come from a sales, marketing, entertainment background, right? So I was a theater kid and have always been very comfortable with public speaking and performing and things like that. Marketing, strategy, all of that is mine. And my husband too is maybe what you'd call more of a nerdy brain. And it's so interesting to me the way that he sees things. We had an instance last week where we did a big closet clean out, and there were some families that were devastated by a fire in our neighborhood, and so they were seeking donations, to help this family out. And I said, oh great, we're the exact same sizes they're requesting. We just did this big closet clean out. So I had a bunch of stuff in my entryway that my neighbors were going to take over. Both of them are structural engineers. And so I said, I'll leave this stuff in the entryway for you. Just come in and get the blue bags, the blue IKEA bags. It's right by the door. So she sends her husband over and he got every single blue bag that was in our entryway, including the bag that had our dry cleaning in it. And so to me, right, as the people I deal with on a day-to-day basis, they would have just gotten those bags that were in the on the rug in the very right behind the door. But to somebody that understands things in a different way, they hear blue bag entryway. They're scouring that entire entryway, every single square foot, for a blue bag, right? And
Yes.
I love that. To me, that just completely sort of shines a light on the way different brains work and how happy I am in this world to have all different kinds of them. Because you know what? The reality is every single thing in that dry cleaning bag probably needed to go anyway. Like, it's time to have a fresh start. It's a new year, all of the things. And so it just is a reminder to me that as much as we like to think we're in control, we are not. The universe or whatever bigger thing you believe in is. And I'm so happy that there are so many different people that see things in all different kinds of ways, because the world would be so boring without that.
And I think it's an amazing self-awareness element, Jen. Obviously, you are aware of yourself, and you can step back and say, yeah, I thought the blue bag this way, and they thought the blue bag that way. Isn't that funny, right? You can find the joy in that and move on, as opposed to some people who get sort of fixated. Why'd you do that? You took my dry cleaning, now I need to get it back. And so you're, I don't know, I'm writing another song called Kind Mind, right? And it's about, are you able to step back in a situation and see the kind way to observe something and laugh at yourself and the situation, right? So that you're making the world a little better from your perspective and direction, and not worse. And so I think just, the way that you viewed that, that's amazing. I think your ability to do that created just this amazing burst of positive energy in the area that you decided to do that. When you come to a show of mine, my signature merch, think like a proton, make the world shine, right? And so that's what you're doing. You made the world shine right there, Jen. You did it.